Hello and welcome to Leviathan News. Today is July 31st. It is the last day of July, almost the last day of summer. And today we have a very special guest, and that's OX Sammy from the newly rebranded Dinero, formerly Redacted. How's it going, Sammy?
Going good, man. How are you doing?
I'm great. So I've been like pestering you for months to get on here. And finally the rebrand is done. And like most of all the info is out about your new product. And I think it's really interesting actually, because for the last like 12 years, has it been 12 years, 13 years since I found Bitcoin through the, um, just a long time ago. My belief was always that crypto was going to like service gray markets, that it fit in this beautiful world of regulatory arbitrage that allowed it to kind of mix and move between countries and persons that the traditional finance system wasn't able to service. And I held this view for a long time, and I think a lot of other people held it as well. Traditional markets work really well for the most extent. They are pretty efficient, and they're already able to handle trillions of dollars of volume. Like I don't know, about a day or in a couple of days. I don't know how long it takes to get to $1 trillion in volume, but seeing how as we do billions on crypto markets daily, trillions probably not out of that reach. But after last week's conference in Nashville, I think that narrative is dead. Watching Trump's speech and then also RFK as well too, and seeing the two out of the three leading U.S. presidential candidates stand up on a stage and give their flowers to Bitcoin and say that self-custody is going to be a right for people to do, that the U.S. government is going to have a Bitcoin reserve, that the SEC is roadblocks are finally going to be taken down. It's become a talking point that could sway the election. And additionally, when it comes to stable coins, which is the other big use case, we're finally hearing people talking about how the stable coins are going to save the US dollar and how it could supplant the Eurodollar system, and just all these crazy things that I never would have thought of even a year or two ago. And in addition to that, we're also seeing like other governments use like blockchains for data storage. I just saw this story for Avalanche and the California government. Like they're putting all the DMV records on Avalanche. And so there's all these like worldwide global use cases at the highest levels of power inside of governments that are finally coming out now. And we've kind of made it. It's not just like a gray market tool anymore. And especially with the two ETFs for Bitcoin and Ethereum, I mean, we're here, and there's no going back at this point. And so I guess my question, Sammy, and I think this is a good place to start, is where does this leave DeFi?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're here to talk about today, because, for that past half decade, the smartest people in this space have building these really incredible projects. We have amazing rails for infrastructure to handle swaps, lending, everything else. But we haven't had that aha moment in the same respect as what I was mentioning before for stable coins or for Bitcoin and ETH. And now seems like the point where in this next half decade, coming towards the end of the 2020s, it might be DeFi's time to shine.
Yeah. I think that obviously I'm a DeFi optimist, right? I think that I think that there's some problems that exist in DeFi right now. And I was saying this the other day where I think that the bull market came a bit too early actually for for DeFi, because going into this run, like what did we really fix with DeFi, right? The the hacks are still a real problem. Um, Hacks are still a problem. Um, the decentralized aspect of things is like not fully there for every project yet. Token mechanics still have to be, could still be improved. Regulatory clarity is not there. All the issues that were holding back DeFi like still exist today, right? Um, and because of that, um, I think that DeFi exists in like this weird place in this market where it's neither appealing to the very risk-on retail crowd that you see on Solana, and um, it's not safe or conservative enough for the institutions that are coming in, right? Which is why it's like in this weird place where forgetting about if it can catch a bid or not. It's not getting traction, right? A lot of these platforms are like not getting traction, and I'd say it's even worse than the last time around because now there's like a million chains and everyone has the exact same DApp on a million chains, and there's multi-chain issues, and there's a lot to be addressed with DeFi, like a lot, compared to like other verticals which are just like winning, right? Like I'd say like the institutional side, um, it's just it's just winning compared to DeFi, right?
Can I take a contrarian viewpoint here?
Yeah.
More, I guess, more positive, right? Because like one of the things or traps that I always fall into is that having spent so much time in this industry, the cynicism comes really easily now, and so I always try to realign myself into like positive viewpoints. And when I look at DeFi, and specifically in the context of you guys, I see that we've built these really incredible rails for all those different verticals that I talked about, and these contracts have now been out there for years in some cases, and you can't fake time. And with the passage of time, you see that the contracts are ironclad, that the safety and the security that's provided through those contracts is up to snuff, and it allows people to see that, oh, hey, we actually can build a system which can work and is secure, and we're able to then build in new ways specifically for you guys, which is why you're here today to talk about your ipxETH product. And this is almost like a reimagining of your original product, which was Redacted, and taking it and saying we have this core functionality, and now we're going to flip the switch and kind of create a new version which is geared towards a different type of investor, which is in this case institutional investors, or other people who might be interested in the fund. And I think that this ipxETH project is could be a really interesting model for not just you guys, but for other people who have built great DeFi products and want to position themselves for institutional adoption or even retail adoption if they can package it correctly into the future.
Yeah, I think that the nice thing about being able to like play with DeFi for 4 years, 5 years now is the fact that a lot of these institutions, at least the ones we're dealing with, right? I hear people say otherwise. When I hear people say the same thing as me, is that you can build like a repertoire, or you can build like a track record of like working like on a project for like 2-3 years, never misappropriating funds, never getting hacked, always keeping like highest security standards, and you can prove the safety of these platforms, right? Um, and when that happens, like no institution is, you can't like launch a DeFi project in a week and be like, oh, like institutions are going to use this or something, right? Like, they need that like background on like who's actually building it and what the project is. And I feel like a lot of projects like don't really get to this like opportunity or this stage because they If it doesn't work, the price goes down. Like they just do another project or something, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine. That's where the word project comes from, and not like startup, right? I understand that like a lot of these are just like fun projects for people, but at the same time, it's like real money, right? And because of that, like you should be a bit more. You should be a bit more careful. But anyways, that's beside the point. Um, I think that like back to what you were saying. Um, I wasn't trying to be a pessimist there in terms of like why DeFi is like not performing well. I think it's actually more optimistic in the sense that I think that with a few detours from like the original vision, um, as someone who has like their boots on the ground, I think that this is the right sort of path for a lot of projects to take now, because we have to prove that um, the projects the products that are coming out of these projects are sustainable and institutional grade, right? And the fact of the matter is that if we want like retail to use them, in the end of the day, like if they like these guys don't think they're like early to it, right? You need to like to tap into like the real retail masses, like you need to prove on an institutional level that like um people use this stuff, right? And then that's a new distribution channel where once you can like prove and tap into those user groups, the opportunity to like scale into retail is like much easier than going the other way around, in my opinion, at least in the context of DeFi right now, right? Um, and I think there's a lot of like purists also that think that you have to like always stay as decentralized as possible, and I think like decentralization is like a spectrum, right? You can have like a a code base that's live in production, that's immutable code, and controlled by governance and all these things. And to be honest, that is sufficiently decentralized, right? Um, to me and to others, I think, right? When you come out of the gates with something that's like you know de facto impossible to like upgrade and keep up to date, then how are you gonna like stay up to speed with all of the developments that are going on, right? It's not Bitcoin where you don't need to upgrade Bitcoin because it works, right? It's like a very fast moving like sector with a ton of innovation happening, and you need to stay on top of it in order to like answer to the needs of the people who want to use it, right? And once you find that PMF, which like to be honest, like what DeFi project has found PMF? Maybe like Uniswap or Aave or some Maker, right? Like other than like those three and maybe some others, you have to
Tornado
be like
Cash.
Tornado Cash, yeah, exactly. Like you need to be like constantly upgrading in order to like stay on top of things until you reach a stage where you are as big and powerful as those guys. Then yes, I'm all for like being like completely immutable and stuff like that.
Yeah, I always bring up that there's like only about like 4 or 5 like truly immutable contracts that we use on a consistent basis. It's like the uh, Uniswap V2, V3, Tornado Cash, Liquidity, like arguably, but they had to build out a new version based on the issues that they found because of interest rates in the first version. And then I don't know, maybe like the ETH to ETH contract or something, but it's a different story. But yeah, you're totally right. Like product market fit takes a long time to find, and even for the projects that we have now in crypto, it's questionable whether they're mature or whether they're in this kind of mid-stage life cycle that there's still a lot of risk that they might not make it. And this applies even to some of the biggest like DeFi names in the industry. Um, I want to come back to your point about decentralization. Is that there's a a spectrum when it comes to investor capital as well. And I mentioned this in the beginning about how for the first 10 years, I always thought that crypto would be this like gray market regulatory arbitrage tool. But now we're starting to see, I mean, that narrative is dead now. And if you are going to like open up your projects to large amounts of capital, there's different demands that are imposed at the fund level on the project. Like they just can't deploy money into whatever you have, even though it may be something revolutionary and great and be the best product on the market. Like if you're not able to meet their compliance demands, their KYC demands, or whatever else they have, then you're not going to see a dollar from them. And that's a limiting factor in this space. And so I think this is what's so cool about ipxETH is that you guys have figured out how to thread the needle here by having an on-chain, like decentralized structure for the core infrastructure of what you built for Dinero, but then be able to open that up to institutional investors and other people that might be interested in this fund through the ability of being able to offer it like a different flavor of it, right? And just for anybody that doesn't know, ipxETH is a actually, Sammy, you want to take this and talk about ipxETH?
Yeah. So with Dinero, the core product that we're building out at the moment is pxETH. It's a 2-token LSD that's been the highest yielding LSD on the market for the past 6 months or so. We are now building a sister protocol right beside it called ipxETH, that is an institutional, compliant, and segregated version, which achieves the same thing but on an institutional level. And it's exactly that. We're working with Laser Digital, which is Nomura's crypto subsidiary, and Galaxy Digital, to provide this product with all the different custody and compliance needs that different institutional investors need. And now we're bringing that to market with a bunch of new institutional platforms.
Yeah. So in your like in your first version for pxETH, you had an LSD 2-token model. One of the tokens gets the yield, the other token is supported through liquidity incentives. Who is running the validators in that model, in the original one?
Yeah, so we have a public roadmap for this. So right now, it's just us running the validators. But we have the upgrade planned with SSV to bring in like a DVT sort of solution in the coming months. But that obviously went on pause to do IPX.
Yeah, so the shift for IPX then is that instead of you guys running the validators, you have Galaxy running the validators, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's an entire kind of compliance backend system to onboard the ETH in the first place into Galaxy.
That's done through Laser Digital Asset Management. Exactly.
Yeah. And so all the core contracts and the core functionality of how ipxETH works is just it's a fork of pxETH. And so you've
actually
created...
It's not even a fork of pxETH.
No?
It's more of a wrapper around pxETH.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So all the TVL, or I guess in this case AUM, that exist within ipxETH is still subject to the same fees that pxETH generates, that obviously get passed back to the Dinero governance participants.
So then how do you segregate the funds that come in through the ipxETH from the pxETH? Or is it just all like kind of commingled together?
Yeah, so that's actually the only thing that matters in the case of ipxETH is the lack of commingling, right? And the way we achieve that segregation is it's a bit complicated, but I'll try and go over it. So basically, a client who wants to interact with ipxETH, whether that's a family office or RIA or whatever it is, right? That needs that institutional rail. They get onboarded onto Laser Digital's asset management platform, which was what I was saying is it's Nomura's crypto subsidiary. Nomura is like a $400 billion plus investment bank in Japan, and clients get onboarded with them. They complete the whole KYC process with them. From there, euros or ETH or whatever other accepted currency comes in. The ETH is purchased from a trusted counterparty on the Laser side. Laser um, is the sole depositor inside of ipxETH for now. They deposit the ETH into our contract. We identify when it comes from an IPX whitelisted address or just a regular retail address. And when that deposit comes in, we are creating a separate batch. So when it comes into pxETH, 1 ETH, 1 ETH, 1 ETH, we're stacking up until we get to 32 ETH to spin up a validator. Whereas with deposits from the KYC address, we're stacking up 1 ETH, 1 ETH, 1 ETH on a separate, like a separate tally to create the validator. Once the 32 ETH has been achieved, we give it over to Galaxy. They create the validator, and then we mint pxETH just as we would on the retail side against that. That pxETH is then staked for apxETH, and it's represented back to the client as ipxETH. That's really it, right? So what you have there is you have segregated collateral, segregated yield, and a segregated validator process, while still producing the same token.
That's so cool. It's such a cool system. I don't think I've seen anything else like this before in DeFi yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like I think that there's people that are playing around with like the RWA side of things that are doing something similar, but more focused on like doing this for like a real asset, and then bringing that on chain. Whereas for us, we're just kind of like flipping the narrative a little bit and doing the same thing as them, but in a crypto native aspect and bringing that to the real world, right? That's like the right way to think about it. I wouldn't say we're we're doing anything like groundbreaking in terms of innovation. We're just doing exactly what it is the institutions have told us they need in terms of compliance, and we're bringing that to like a whole new group of users that are just completely sidelined right now.
And I think this is the big issue which people have missed in crypto for the past half decade, especially for DeFi, is that they've been trying to sell the product to the same 10,000 people online. And that's a pretty tight closed system, and it creates incredible competition to incentivize, to pay high yields, to do all these crazy things that we see in DeFi on a daily basis. But here, you're actually selling it to people outside of crypto as a like registered investment product that you could go to, like your RA or through a family office or as an accredited investor. And I think that flips the script, because now you're unlocking an entire pool of capital which wasn't able to be onboarded into the system before. Very similar to how the Bitcoin ETF opened up billions of dollars of inflows into Bitcoin, and now the ETF is doing the same for ETH. It's these types of, I would say that it's like it is an innovation, both from like a legal sense, and it may not be like technologically groundbreaking, since you guys are just using a wrapper for what you've done, but you're opening up a brand new market and able to drive sales for a product that you've built, which I think is pretty groundbreaking.
Yeah, appreciate it. I think that we spent a ton of time on this, a whole bunch, and it's good to see it like kind of finally come to fruition, for sure.
This model that you've come up with of having a fully on-chain structure that provides a segregated deposit and whitelist structure for institutional capital, I think it's replicable to other parts of DeFi. I think there's a lot of projects, like, think about if Aave took one of their like AUSD, AUSDT deposit vaults and created a segregated structure that was able to do lending. I think they've looked at this before and was able to offer that as a fund structure. With the ETH LSD, it's pretty easy because like the ETH is contained and you have just the rewards being paid out in ETH. There's not any need to have like other users in the system. So I think there's probably some difficulty in expanding this to other verticals outside of the ETH staking rewards at the moment. But I do think it's a step in the right direction, and we might see other projects that are providing different services take this model and create a like income funds like you've created for ETH.
Yeah, I mean the thing about other DeFi assets is that like Aave did do it, right, with Aave Treasury, I think it was called. That was their sort of institutional product. I think what we realized very early on is that, as we try to like appeal to this like new set of users coming in to crypto as a whole, is that with them it's all about trust, right? And if we were to just build ipxETH by ourselves, like it, I don't think we would have been able to like get the traction we did, because a lot of these guys have just been burned, right, in crypto before, and they need to see like a name that they've worked with in the past and trust. And like, with ipxETH, the due diligence process is very easy because um, if they were investing in one of Nomura's, gold funds or oil funds, it's the same due diligence process, really, right? Other than like um, understanding the risks of ETH itself, the compliant the due diligence, like the due diligence process, which typically is like very very complicated for like a lot of these guys, gets simplified down to the like the most basic TradFi DD you could do. And I think that's what I say that because I think that's what went wrong with Aave Treasury and some of these other people's like shot at institutional products, where they sort of just like built it themselves, but didn't have that like big IB backing them or that big TradFi player getting behind them. Um, and that's sort of what their like main blocker was, right, in terms of getting traction there.
Yeah, and so this ipxETH product that you guys have built, it's a like fund. It's an income fund, right?
Well, so we built ipxETH, which is a token, right? And it's sort of up to Laser, to decide on like what that actually gets applied to as. So it could be like a good application of it would be an income fund, or something akin to that. But like as of right now, the ipxETH is sort of built out, and we should wait on them to say like what they want to do with it.
So if I'm a family office and I want to buy $10 million worth of ipxETH, do I get the token delivered to?
Well, the thing is that the token is like in some ways pointless. We're not going to like all of the push for us is on um the push for us is like more focused on the um okay, I'm just wondering how I can say this. It's just
Right.
like
The push for you guys is increasing the TVL into.
yeah, okay, the push for us is on increasing the TVL.
Yeah.
Um
I think the point that I was getting at was that the great thing about all these like tokenized LSDs or DeFi products that we have is that even in your system, there's the ability to issue loans against the the asset. And so I got my question is that once the ipxETH is minted, is there any future ability for the buyers of these tokens to say mint a stablecoin or do other activities that you normally see in DeFi with it?
Yeah. So all of the BD push that the like team has is focused on pxETH, right? ipxETH, I don't think the DeFi scene is mature enough to where anyone even would want to take it and borrow against something or use it as collateral yet. The only integration we have planned for ipxETH is pxUSD, right? So native leverage against ipxETH using our stablecoin. We just haven't seen any demand to like take it and put it on, Aave or some of the stuff that the pxETH holders want, right?
Baby
Yeah,
steps.
baby steps, exactly. I think we take it one thing at a time. And if someone comes to us and says like, yeah, I really want to like take ipxETH and use it to like mint some other stable coin, then like we can do it. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the moment, I'd say like there isn't a ton of demand for anything outside of just the pure ETH yield.
Yeah, yeah. And so there has been discussions about the ETH ETF adding staking at some point in the future. There's no timeline for it. It might require a new administration coming in to the U.S. If that does happen, you would see potentially all the ETFs that have launched add staking in, which I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's probably good in the long term. From what I've seen from the research and analysis that's been done, it would add 3 to 5% a year additional that would be earned by these ETFs in terms of staking. However, it would definitely lead to even more consolidation of ETH into the staking products, which is like, I don't know, it's questionable whether it's good or bad in the long term. Like, how much ETH do you actually want to be staked overall in the totality of the network? It's quite good that they're just buying vanilla ETH right now because it does keep that from being staked and keeps the staking yields higher for everybody else. But I think that you guys will separate yourselves even if they add on staking to the Ethereum ETFs because of the two token model of pxETH and ipxETH. And
Well,
yeah,
I've been asked this question a few times. I think that if staked Ethereum is like deemed compliant enough to like be a part of the ETH ETF, then I think we're in the best position we've ever been, because we've just proven that like pxETH is the only institutional grade like LSD on the market right now that's working with like big names, and we'll have that track record beneath us of just using the ipxETH in a different context, just not in the context of an ETF. But I think that we've been able to prove now that it could be used in a variety of different applications, right? So for us, it's like the ETH ETF adding staking actually opens up way more doors than it does close it for us. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, just like the Bitcoin ETF made all of this possible in the first place. I think that
Or not even that, I mean, if someone wants to add staking to their ETF, right? Like
Mhm.
there's an obvious answer there, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to come back because even if the other existing ETFs add like staking into it, your yields will still be higher than theirs because of the two token model.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? Like, so
Yeah.
if they're looking for edge in terms of yield, then right,
Mhm.
are you going to stake it with Stakefish or Lido or something, or are you going to stake it with the institutional version of all of these products, which already has higher yield, right?
Yeah. You know, this past year has been quite eye-opening for me, because I had come into 2023 believing that the LSDs that had come to market had really found incumbency, and that's not the case. Like, we had all this restaking come through. We had a bevy, a horde of new LRTs come to market and take an incredible amount of market share away from Wrapstake ETH, RS ETH, and Frax ETH, and probably you guys as well too. Just sucked it all up, and were able to take in millions of ETH into these new LRTs, which I didn't. It's quite surprising, actually, looking back on it. I didn't think that we'd have so many new entrants into the market that would be able to take such market share. But it looks like this provides a new way to acquire market share and to compete heavily against those other variants out there, and is what becoming one of the most competitive staking markets in the world, if not the.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think restaking is a very cool concept. But I think that a lot of these projects that came out of the gate and, you know, had the restaking sort of like that, you're seeing a lot of the TVL like flee out of restaking stuff now. And I think you'll see that a lot of these LRTs become LSTs. That's a bit of a hot take, but I think that you know, I won't speak on it actually.
I mean, I have a lot. I have a lot of views on it. I mean, to generate even 1% of extra yield from the AVS is going to require a gargantuan amount of value creation if they're not just like distributing tokens and points. There's something like 15 or 18 or $20 billion worth of ETH that's in these LRTs at the moment, and generating $200 million a year in real revenue is going to be hard. And
yeah,
I think it may take,
and it gets even harder after you add more competitors to Eigenlayer like Symbiotic and Crack and some of these other guys. Then it gets even more isolated and harder to create that same effect.
yeah. And so I think the LRT expansion and development is a boon for like solo operators, because now if you have like one validator, you can go out and really choose an aggressive risk profile to go after. But if you're a major LRT provider that has billions of dollars, like 10 billion, $20 billion under your belt, like, it's going to be very hard to balance the amount of risk versus the yield that you get. You have to be quite conservative to ensure that you don't get slashed. And so I think that there's going to be a repricing. I mean, we've already kind of seen it with the latest like Pendle expirations. Now that some of the tokens are out there, I think those yields will come back down to earth, and they're going to have to compete with the existing LSDs again. And like you said as well too, with all these other different restaking platforms that we're seeing as well too, it's going to be extremely competitive. And the bigger you get, the more the more conservative you have to be in how you allocate towards the AVSs.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to navigate, and I think that, you know, like a lot of these guys that will bring the billions and billions of dollars of new capital into ETH because of staking probably lean on the more conservative side, especially from what I've seen.
Yeah.
I don't think you know, taking on all that extra risk for an extra 5 bips, 10 bips of yield is ever justified, right?
Yeah. But what you can't kind of how do I say this? What you can't just copy from other like existing LSDs is the depth and liquidity and existing incentive programs that they control. Like specifically in your guys' case, you've used the past couple of years and this 2-token model that you have for your ETH product to be able to deliver long-term incentives and be able to split people into two groups versus one providing liquidity, one providing or just chasing the staking yields. And I think that's probably the best model. Like when you look at how people like provide liquidity and the need to have a stable one-to-one asset versus ETH, it really is the better model. And I think it's you and the Frax guys who have gone down this route of having this 2-token model. And I think it, from a efficiency perspective, it is the best. And I'm surprised that other new LRTs haven't used that system. And so even if they do want to compete, they're going to have to.
The thing is that like it's hard for them to recreate that because obviously, yeah, we took the inspiration for the 2-token model from Frax. And I think like now you're starting to see the two different directions that we're going down. I think where Frax is going is like, get more supply into Frax ETH, because obviously the issue with the 2-token model is that the staked side is infinitely scalable. And then the non-stake side is obviously limited in terms of how much incentives it can really get.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, I think that the staked ETH, with Frax, like I think like their design choice to go down the L2 route makes sense, where like Frax ETH is the gas token, and that will most likely get a ton of supply in to like even out the ratio. Whereas with us, I think the way we're looking at it is more like from the TradFi angle, like creating a junior tranche and a senior tranche, and recognizing that a lot of these institutions want exposure to the senior tranche, and the junior tranche, which is just like plain pxETH, we can do things on, for example, like we were talking about right now, the restaking side, like restaking everything and providing all of that additional yield to the pxETH holders, so that we could potentially be like either the highest yielding LST or the highest yielding LRT, and there's a bunch of different ways to play it, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's interesting now that we're both like, Frax is probably like a year old, we're like 6 months old, like seeing like the different routes you can go to like make the 2-token model like even more sustainable. But yeah, like the LRTs, like it's hard for them to, like someone who just pops up out of nowhere with a bunch of TVL, which is, it's unclear where the TVL came from, all of these different, whatever. I think that like, they don't have like the treasury to like necessarily like support, they don't have the treasury to like support one of these things, right? So it's tricky for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's really risky to go out and buy $10-20 million worth of convex or CRV to lock in liquidity incentives for the long time, or go down the AVS route. I mean, I think that there's a lot of unexplored space here, and that's what makes this kind of next couple of years so exciting, is that we're going to see a lot more experimentation, and these type of plays, by adding in, say, ipxETH, really are going to open a lot of doors and really prove these business models for these on-chain projects, and show where the strengths are. And I think that's what's so exciting about it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah. So I would everybody that's listening at home, please go check out Dinero. They've got a bunch of new docs out after this rebrand that they've done. Unfortunately, you guys had to pivot away from Redacted, which was like cool, but it's definitely not.
I mean, I think everyone, when we first announced the rebrand, everyone's like, why the fuck would you do this? Right? And then I think like now that we're like, they see ipxETH, they're like, oh, like I get it. I understand why they did it.
You've got your new PFP, but you should put him in a suit.
Yeah. I think we have the designer working on that. Well, usually what I do is like on Twitter, it's like me holding the gun, and then on the calls, it's me holding like a cup of coffee. So Yeah.
Is that strange for some of these large institutions to like get on and talk to like a frog butterfly that is anonymous?
Actually, surprisingly, they loved it. Okay, one thing I noticed with everything we've been doing on the institutional side is that all of these groups, whether they have exposure or not, like know exactly what's up, which was very, very surprising to me. Um, they know exactly, what's going on the restaking side and what Vitalik thinks of it, and you know, uh, everything. They know exactly what's going on. Um, So it's pretty interesting in that sense. And I think because of that, like, that's another thing we had going for us, is that because they knew what was going on, they knew that like this is like the crypto native culture, and a lot of them like want to do something on the digital asset side, and they recognize that you know being so institutionally friendly only gets you to like um 80% of the way in the marathon, right? You sort of need that crypto native aspect of things to like navigate this like ridiculous industry. So in some ways it actually played to our favor, but like in the grand scheme of things, like yeah, we can't like call ourselves like retarded cartel and stuff, right?
Retardio. Well, thanks for coming on, Sammy. It was great to talk about what you guys are doing with Dinero and this pretty incredible pivot that you've been able to manage, and the onboarding of the institutions, which is finally here and coming to DeFi. I think that hopefully next time when we speak, you guys will be smashing those TVL records with, I don't know, 5, 10, $20 billion worth of ETH staked, and setting records and being the premier institutional staking product. So congrats on getting this.
Appreciate it a lot, man, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah. For everybody else that's listening at home, you can find us at Leviathan News or Leviathan_news on Twitter and Telegram. And we will be back tomorrow